About the civil rights movement in this country, but when I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, and I think, they're identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous.
Fox News contributor and then analyst for National Public Radio, Juan Williams, a man paid to express his opinions, talking about his inner anxieties when encountering certain Muslims dressed in a certain manner on airplanes. Well, that short soundbite was part of a larger discussion in which Mr. Williams was trying to convince Bill O'Reilly that not all people of one belief should be blamed for the actions of an extremist of that same religion. That episode of the O'Reilly Factor aired on Monday. On Wednesday, NPR fired Juan Williams for his comments. And Thursday, this is how some in the media reacted.
NPR, this is disgraceful. NPR needs to hire Juan Williams back, and I think most rational Americans agree with that.
Juan Williams was being very honest and almost talking himself as part of the problem. The problem is I do see a Muslim in the garb, and I do get nervous. It's not rational because it obviously is a very small number. He's bringing the problem to the surface, being honest, talking about human behavior, loses his job.
I think that they were very wrong.
I don't think he should have been fired because, in fact, as you pointed out, Sherry, lots of people have this idea that the point he was trying to make is I get nervous. And that's okay to say. Firing him for saying that, I think is kind of ridiculous.
If he had said, when I get around a group of Tea Partiers, I get nervous, would NPR have fired him? Probably not. If he said, every time I go see a Catholic priest, I get nervous, would they have fired him?
Maybe.
No, they would not.
You never know.
But because it's about Muslims, boom, he's gone.
Well, later that day, the head of NPR was questioned about the abrupt firing.
This is not a reflection on his comments. This is not a debate. Juan feels the way he feels. That is not for me to pass judgment on. That is really his feelings that he expressed on Fox News are really between him and his, psychiatrist or his publicist or take your pick. But it is not compatible with a news analyst with the role of a news analyst on NPR's air.
Well, her comments, especially that crack about the psychiatrist, did not sit well, and Juan was back on the Factor that night.
And we're having an honest discussion. This is what America should be. People having a real debate and telling you, as you pointed out rightly in the Talking Points memo, this is what I felt. If I have
wasn't
a fear,
an opinion.
No, I don't fit in their box. I'm not predictable, black, liberal. And let me tell you something else. You were exactly right when you said, you know what this comes down to? They were looking for a reason to get rid of me because I appear on Fox News.
That's right.
They don't want me talking to you.
Schiller eventually gave an apology about her callous comments, but not directly to Juan. Now, we should point out Juan has been an infrequent panelist on this show. I'd say most of us are friends with him. Any of you think that he should have been fired for what he said?
No. But look, Juan and I have something in common because 26 years ago, Ellen Weiss, who was then the producer of All Things Considered, their highly rated afternoon program, called me, just as she called Juan, and now she's executive vice president, and told me that my services as the only conservative commentator on NPR were no longer needed. Why, I asked? Because you become too predictable. This is the ideological uniformity of opinion that they not only want to enforce on NPR, but also they are reluctant for anybody to come on Fox. This wasn't about Muslims. This was all about Fox. They hate this network.
Judy, you're nodding in agreement?
I think this was all about Fox. I mean, Maura Liasson, who also appears on Fox News programs, is under a lot of pressure. Everyone knows that she's now been targeted. This is about people who are supposedly news analysts appearing on another show that many people find objectionable, many people find too conservative. I don't buy it.
Is there a touch of hypocrisy here in what NPR has done?
Well, you mean that plenty of NPR analysts go all over the media and do commentary and never get in trouble for it. I think there's a touch of that. But I tell you what, there's a bigger touch of. I think there's a bigger touch of George Soros, the eccentric left-wing billionaire, who, by an amazing coincidence, gave a big donation to NPR and then...
$1.8 million.
That we know about. But let me tell you something. You don't hire a quote 100 reporters for $1.8 million, you might be able to pay them for 6 months or something like that. But if there's really 100 reporters to be hired, then it's way more than $1.8 million. That's enough to turn the head of anybody in NPR, to make them do what they wanted to do anyway, which is get rid of Juan.
George Soros, probably the world's most liberal billionaire, wouldn't you say?
I would.
Is it appropriate that on that day, on the day that Juan gets fired, we find out about this almost $2 million from Soros to hire reporters for NPR?
Well, I think that they've had it's been public that they've long had issues with Juan. I mean, there's been conflicts in the past over other things that he said. He said something about Michelle Obama. So I think to tie it to George Soros is maybe a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's news that they lean liberal. It's probably why I listen to them all day, every single day. I like them a lot. I think they do a very good product. I just think that what Juan said is not a fireable offense in any. There's no one, I think, that could look at that and say a person should be fired over that.
John, there's another element here, too. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a Muslim advocacy group and also was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation case in Texas a few years ago, put out a memo, I get their emails, the night before, urging all of their supporters to contact NPR and put the heat on Juan Williams. So there's that element, too. Whatever happened to my liberal friends who are worried about a chilling effect that we hear so often and damage to the First Amendment?
Under the First Amendment, Judy, we are guaranteed freedom of speech. Doesn't that apply to news analysts as well? I mean, Juan was expressing his opinion.
But he is a news analyst, and under NPR, and by the way, these were old New York Times rules as well, you're not supposed to be spouting off on your personal opinions. There's a kind of weird, now very old-fashioned line that some news organizations still attempt to draw. I feel very sorry for NPR here because, I'll tell you why. They've shot themselves in the foot. This was a news organization, one of the last, that was sending out reporters trying to do great stories, doing great stories, and now they've really been their own worst enemy with this action. It's most unfortunate.
Howard Kurtz, who used to be at the Washington Post and a famous, well-known media critic and does a show for CNN, is now at the Daily Beast, said this is a blunder of enormous proportions. I mean, I think that's the final word in terms of the way the media are reacting to this. I'm hard-pressed to find anybody, except maybe CARE, that thinks it's a good idea that Juan got fired from NPR.
CARE, the Council on
American Islamic Relations.
American Islamic Relations, yeah. All right, time for a break.